And we are live. It's the Revved Up 906 podcast, a Detroit Pistons podcast, to be exact. And I'm Hudson.
And I'm Ryan.
And before we get into episode number 22 of season 2, I want to talk to you guys about a few quick things. First off, Grind Clothing Co. is our official merch sponsor. So make sure to click the link in the description below or in our YouTube bio so that you can rep your favorite Detroit Pistons podcast, whether it's sweatshirts, t-shirts, hats, all of the above, any kind of merch you could possibly want. We have it because of Grind Clothing Co. So make sure to rep your favorite Detroit Pistons podcast. Also, if you are new to the channel and a Detroit Pistons fan, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And as we go along in episode 22, we are going to have a lot of takes, questions, comments. So make sure to comment below your thoughts on everything we are talking about. We would love to know what you guys have to say also. And if you happen to like today's episode, make sure to hit that thumbs up button. If you aren't so much into long form content like today's video is, make sure to still subscribe and follow us on Instagram. That link is in our description below, because each and every day, weekly, we post around 35 to 45-second clips. So you can still be in tune with everything going on with the Detroit Pistons without having to watch our full 35, 45-minute episodes. So still make sure to like and subscribe and follow us on Instagram. Let's get into episode number 22. We have a fun topic for you guys. James Wiseman has really been kind of a guy that's come to fruition through the late parts of this season. And we kind of want to focus in on James Wiseman because with the absence of Stewart, it means that he's going to be getting more minutes. And then in the month of March, he has been playing pretty rock solid. And so we're going to kind of talk about, is James Wiseman a bust? But he isn't, but is he a success story? No. But is he a great role player for the Detroit Pistons and finding his role? There's a lot of questions to be answered today. So we're going to get into it. First off, I kind of want to talk about the opportunity James Wiseman has with the absence of Isaiah Stewart, because we know that James Wiseman's career, after being, I believe, the first overall pick, right, Ryan?
Second
overall pick to now just kind of fighting for minutes. And with the absence of Isaiah Stewart, how important is it for him to really step up the rest of the season and try to earn his minutes, whether he's on a new team or with the Detroit Pistons?
Yeah, when you look at how early of a pick he was at second overall to where he was with Golden State, to really not seeing the floor, being injured, to us acquiring him at the deadline last year, and the short little stint he had to end the season in the 20 games and what he did for us then, and then what he's done for us thus far. With Stewart out, there's no reason why he shouldn't be averaging at least a double-double. Because realistically, we only have the three big men in Duren, Stewart, and Wiseman. You take Stewart out of the mix because he's out for the rest of the season. And then you have Duren there, who recently in the last 6 games has only played in 1 game, and that would have been last night against the Minnesota Timberwolves. So with that being said, like, there is an opportunity here for Wiseman. And
Totally.
If he doesn't hit the ground running and take advantage of this, there could be some implications whether or not he remains with the Pistons this upcoming season or not. It's literally in his hands whether or not he's to be with the team next year or not. And that's what, to me, it's, if he does play well in this situation, because he has played well in the last 6 games, but if he continues to do that, but then some, like if he can increase this at all for what he's been doing, I can see him staying through next year. But if he doesn't, I could easily see how the door opens and he's kicked out and then the door closes. But it's really in his hands.
For me, if he plays the way he has in the month of March, consistently, he for sure has a role on many different NBA teams, whether it's the Pistons or any other team. There is a role for James Wiseman in today's NBA because it all really started March 11th versus the Charlotte Hornets. He finished with 10 points, which isn't crazy, but then he followed it up with 9 rebounds. And then he had a couple quiet games against Toronto and then Miami with 6 points each night. But then he had 10 rebounds, 7 rebounds. And then as of recent, he's starting to get more starter minutes just because of Jalen Duren kind of in and out, and then Isaiah Stewart officially out. And he against the Boston Celtics, he had played 37 minutes and 24 points, 9 rebounds, and 11 of 13 shooting. So he's not just showing that, yeah, he can get a bunch of shots up, but he can be efficient. And I think that's a big thing for James Wiseman to show that he isn't going to just throw up shots like some centers do when they get the opportunity to play. He is going to let the game come to him. And I think that's really shown us as of recent. And I think that it's hard because we know Isaiah Stewart is a starter level player. Jalen Duren's the solidified starter of this Detroit Pistons team. And that kind of puts James Wiseman in a position where it's like, okay, what do we do with him? Where does he land? How many minutes do you give him? Where now you see him starting to get some longevity in minutes, averaging from 18 to 31 in this last month. And he's really finding a groove with it and staying active and showing that he wants to be a part of the Detroit Pistons. And that's absolutely crucial, whether I think that's a big part in whether he stays with the Detroit Pistons or not. His solid play as of late, what do you think that means for his future? Do you think he's fighting to want to stay on the Pistons or to hopefully solidify himself as the backup center? Or do you think he's trying to get out of Detroit? Where do you think his head is at right now? Because when he first came to Detroit, I was a little worried. What happens with James Wiseman, because if he's putting up great play, that means that he's going to be worth that much more.
Yeah, well, to me, I really think he's just trying to prove himself right now. He's trying to prove that on any given night, he can have success in the NBA. I think he's just trying to do his job right now because he knows like he's gone through what the experience is like to be traded from Golden State to Detroit now. And I don't think he's wanting to do that again. I don't know. Nobody in the right sense, unless you ask for it specifically, wants to be traded. Nobody wants
Right.
that. You start and have a bond with all your guys around you. You don't want to leave them. And that's the tough situation with sports is you develop all these connections and then the next day you're traded. And it's like, man, I love those guys, but now they didn't even want me. And now I'm going to a team that did want me. What's going on? Like, what's going on through his head? So I don't think he's necessarily wanting to be out of Detroit right now. I think he's wanting to be in Detroit long term. I think he's happy where he is. But I also think he's a little worrisome just in the sense of my minutes, they are increased more so than they ever been. But that's in the result of Isaiah Stewart being out for the rest of the season. Jalen Duren has been getting his minutes cut back just because they're tailing off towards the end of the season and they're not wanting to get him injured or anything else. So it's his time to shine. And I think he's recognizing that. And I think his goal is to really go all gang ho and try to be the best version he can be in any situation, whether he gets traded or not, he stays with the Pistons or not. I think he's wanting to put the best of him forward and resulting in, hey, if you move me, this team that's getting me, they know what they're getting. If I stay with the Pistons, they know what I'm going to give them. And I think that's really what he's working with right now. But overall, with his recent play, again, his recent play has not been terrible. I think it's solid. But when you look at what he's done as of lately, and this is me discrediting him a little bit, in just the regard of as good as he has been, it's not like jump out of the box score, slap you in the face, like, wow, this is amazing. It's just when I look at it, I'm like, James Wiseman is a role player. He's just a good role player. That's all he is. Because Like you look back at last night against Minnesota there, he had 33 minutes played and no, 22 rather, 22 minutes played. Duran started, Duran's back, Cade's back. Ivy did not play. And then obviously Stewart did not play. And then Asar is out for the rest of the season also. So a lot of the key guys not playing, and you get 22 minutes off the bench. But outside of Duran, you're the only big man on the roster pretty much because Tosan Awoma is not a big man. So really, Wiseman's the only big man. 22 minutes played gives you 11 points, 4 rebounds, 50% from the field, 2 of 4 shooting, and then 87% at the line, missed a free throw. So it's not a bad game, and I'll give them the benefit of the doubt just because you had Rudy Gobert playing last night. You had Naz Reid playing last night. But outside of those two guys, you had Kyle Anderson off the bench. Kyle Anderson's more of a 3-4, not necessarily a true 4 or 5. But he is bigger. But outside of those 3 guys, they don't really have a lot of bigs on that team because Cat's out with that injury. So realistically, Wiseman was going up against starter kind of guys last night versus what he had been going up against. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt for the last 6 games with that most recent. But then Boston, they were resting a couple guys that night too. But these games, I'm going, who's out there that Wiseman is usually going up against? Because normally he's going up against the bench players. He's not going up against key guys on playoff teams. These teams are starting to rest their guys a little bit more so than they have usually. So to me, it's just, do these stats look great in regard to what Wiseman has done in his career? Absolutely. When you look at these stats, you're going, wow, Wiseman's playing the best he's ever played. But that's the sad part, is he's playing the best he's ever played at pretty much year 3 right now. And the best set he's played is not anything spectacular. And I don't know if this is a far-fetched comparison, but he kind of reminds me of Tyson Chandler. Tyson Chandler was a highly touted player coming out of high school, came into the league. Everybody was like hyping him up 24/7, high expectations. And then he doesn't really do a whole lot, has a couple of all-star appearances. That's about it. But he's pretty much a role player, a good role player on any given team. Wiseman, same thing. Highly touted prospect coming out of high school. Everybody's going like, yeah, he's legit. He's going to be the next face of the league. And here we are, year 3, because he's pretty much didn't play a whole year because of injury. But year 3, and this is the best he's ever played. So I really think he's just trying to prove himself right now. And I don't think he's necessarily looking to the future or looking back at the past. I think he's just putting his head down and trying to really showcase what he can do, because if this is the best he can do, I don't know if there's going to be a lot of teams calling for him, even by trade or free agency. But I can make a case for him staying if he were to continue this play for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I'm just kind of proud of James Wiseman because, like, you kind of have to start from somewhere. And I think that it's going to take small increments, especially a guy that's battled with injuries. I just don't know if he's the same player that was at Memphis as far as body and where his body was at back then. So I'm just happy that he's kind of trying to take these small increments, show that he's improving. And one thing that's going to show big time on film is that he's engaged, because I think a lot of the time when I watch that Golden State film, I'm like, oh, he just doesn't seem engaged. He doesn't seem present. Where with the Detroit Pistons as of late, I just really think that he's given it his all. And I'm just proud of that, because we didn't see that early on with the Detroit Pistons when he was first got here. He just kind of seemed out of it, where I think he's maturing, or something like a switch is flipping a little bit. And I think he's trying to carve himself out of roles. So props to James Wiseman for that. I'll give him props. I want to single in on a game that happened. Ryan mentioned it, March 22nd against the Boston Celtics. I watched the film of that game and I was really kind of surprised at the connection that Cade Cunningham had with James Wiseman. Now, Cade Cunningham isn't the typical passer where he hones in on one player to get the ball. He's kind of a spread it all around the place. He's not really focusing on one certain player. But in this Boston Celtics matchup, Cade Cunningham focused on getting James Wiseman the ball, and 4 out of Cade's 6 total assists went to James Wiseman. And this was actually James Wiseman's best game of the season with 24 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists, 11 of 3 shooting. And then Cade Cunningham finished with those 6 assists. So either 4 or 5 of those assists went to James Wiseman. So what I think this is proving to me, yep, the Celtics were missing some guys and they ended up winning big time. I understand, but it's going to take some time for a guy like Cade Cunningham to trust somebody like James Wiseman. And that proves to me that James is integrated into this team. And when Cade Cunningham knew James was rolling, he's like, this is the kind of guy I got to get the ball to. It's not the kind of guy where the game goes to him. No, you get him the ball and James goes up with it, whether it's at the rack or right below the free throw line. And if you watch that film, I mean, the shots James was making, I mean, they weren't easy. The Celtics at one point had to start game planning around James in that defense. And I was just really impressed the way James kind of rebuked the defense. He just did a well-rounded game. And in 36 minutes, I mean, that's a lot of minutes. I was just kind of happy to see that connection there. And I think Cade's the kind of guy to vet for a guy like James Wiseman, whether it's in the off season. You know, Cade's going to have to be involved with this off season because I can't see the Pistons going about it any other way. You got to involve Cade. And I just think that James Wiseman is the guy he's going to vouch for. I was just really happy to see that game because it just kind of showed how Cade Cunningham, who finished with 15 points, by the way, Cade could have easily went and tried to get 30. I mean, he can do that any given night. He just got 32 the other night. But instead he was trying to feed James Wiseman the ball. I just think that proves a lot to the unselfishness of this team and how everyone kind of recognizes like, ooh, James got it rolling tonight. Let's try to get him the ball. That's the kind of guy I would like having off the bench for a couple of years.
Yeah, I have absolutely no complaints at all if he's going to be the third man in terms of
Right.
in terms of our big man group. If he's the third guy, I have no complaints whatsoever. Just because of what he can be still only 22 years old, has a whole career ahead of him. Usually where these guys are in terms of getting injured and then all of a sudden trying to find their spot in their career and their role within a team a couple years later, this usually this is like the perfect time for guys to develop. And Wiseman, 22 years old, in just post All-Star break, he's gotten an increase in points, minutes, and rebounds. Before All-Star break, averaging 13.7, pretty much 14 minutes a game. Post All-Star break, averaging 20 minutes a game, roughly 19.6 to be an exact number, but I'm going to give him the round up on it and go 20. And then before All-Star break, averaged 7.2 points per game. Post, 9 points a game. Before, 4.5 rebounds a game, till now 7 rebounds a game. So what he's been able to do, given more of an opportunity, and having guys like Cade Cunningham and others looking for him in the offense, we're seeing Wiseman take a big step in his game, but then a bigger step with his overall role with the team because everybody's recognizing the dude is 7'2". He is long, he is massive, he is fast. If he can just learn to make the right cut at the right time or cut off a screen at the right time on a roll or just set up a good screen and not necessarily force it and have a foul called, look for Wiseman every single time. Because while we were down in Detroit for the Heat games, there, like every single time Wiseman would set the screen and then he'd kind of wait a minute before he rolls. But if he rolled right away, he was wide open. Because like Bam Adebayo, I love Bam, great big man, elite big man in the NBA. But Wiseman can get a shot up over you. And then outside of Bam, your next biggest guy is Thomas Bryant. And Thomas Bryant, I love Thomas Bryant too. Solid role player, but that's all he is. The point is, like, Wiseman at times was going up against Thomas Bryant with ease. So my thing is, if you learn to maybe set your screens a little bit better and you're rolling off these right away rather than waiting for a minute and then going, think of how much more of an opportunity he would have in an offense like this. So, and now our offense is lacking. Obviously, our best scorer on the court at all times is Cade Cunningham. Outside of Cade, it's Ivy. Outside of Ivy, it's Duran, and so forth. But when those guys aren't out there, Wiseman is going up against guys that typically wouldn't start. And when you look back at what Wiseman could have been, I think he can still get there. I'm not saying he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, but I can still think I would assume he can get to somewhat of that level. And just the connection that he's been able to contain with Cade and others, they're seeing what a lot of us are seeing, and the opportunities that we give him, good things can happen. But there still needs to be a lot of growth for him to take that jump. But we're seeing it slowly but surely. We're seeing a minutes increase, a scoring increase, and a rebounds increase just because he's been given an opportunity. And that's what Cade's been giving him most recently in Boston there. And that's what all these other guys are continuing to do. They're trying to feed him the ball because they know if they give him the ball, he's one of the most efficient big men in the league, let alone one of the most efficient players in the league. So if he's given the right opportunity, good things will happen. And that's why, like you said, Cade could have gone off for 30 points. Instead, he decided to pass the ball and give others an opportunity to do something with it. And that's the unselfishness of Cade Cunningham that I love. But I also like, Cade, just be a dog. Go out there and get the win.
Yeah.
So, but with that being said, James Wiseman is slowly but surely building momentum with this team in regards to respect, but then also like good things will happen if you give him the ball at the right time. And like the last 6 games is proving that fact alone. Post All-Star break with the minutes increase is proving that alone. Give him the opportunity and good things will happen.
Make sure to comment below what you suspect will happen with James Wiseman in the offseason and what your thoughts are of his recent play in the month of March. Recently, James Wiseman was asked about him trying to defy the bust label. And this is what James Wiseman had to say. I just kind of want to talk about these quotes just so we can kind of show where James Wiseman's head is at right now as we get towards the end of this season. Quote, "I believe I can be a great player," Wiseman told Fox Sports, "but just staying humble, though, just taking it one day at a time because the NBA is a long process and life's not easy. So I got to put in work and keep getting better every day." And then Wiseman was also asked recently about the tough struggle that his career has been so far. And this is what he had to say. "Most of the stuff has been out of my control. Injuries." Wiseman told Fox Sports of his struggles. "For real, but it's been a journey. Just taking it one day at a time, just trusting in God and keeping my faith in God and keep my faith in myself, just working hard every single day. It's life. Stuff is going to happen. Stuff is going to be out of your control. You just got to keep going," end quote. So James Wiseman's in the mindset of he's going to keep grinding. He's going to keep doing his thing. He's not going to roll over and just go and play in a China league. You know, he's not going to just go and take in that process. He's going to really try and grind it out. And I think that James Wiseman's the kind of guy where, you know, it's tough because I want to say that he's going to be better than a guy that can burn you on any given night. I want to be able to say that he's going to be the 6th man that you just can't stop. But he's really the kind of guy where every once in a while, there's a guy that just pops off and destroys you. And you know, like kind of like a Danilo Gallinari or DeAndre Ayton used to be that early in his career where he wasn't as consistent, where he's now great. But early in DeAndre Ayton's career, he was kind of inconsistent. Every once in a while, he had a big game where he blocks you 4 times. He has 25 points, 13 rebounds. He's just that kind of guy where you don't know when he's going to do that. That's kind of where James Wiseman is at. And I'm happy to have that kind of guy on our team because every once in a while, those kinds of guys are going to lead a certain team to a win. It's just James Wiseman, like you said, he was the 2nd overall pick. It's hard because considering everything that's happened, you give him the label of bust, but just because he's a role player, does that mean he's a complete bust? I don't know. You know, it's a hard question to answer. We'll get to that very soon. Since James Wiseman has replaced, I know I kind of wanted to solidify this stat. Since James Wiseman has replaced Isaiah Stewart. His statistics are at 9 points. I just lost it for a second. 9.7 rebounds, almost 2 assists, and 1 block in his 18 minutes per game in the last 5 appearances coming off the bench. Man, I like that stat line from a bench guy. Like, I don't have too much to complain about there. Like, there aren't many backup centers in the league today that are giving much more than that. And so it's like, are you happy with James Wiseman coming off the bench and taking that role? Or do you rather him walk off in free agency? We kind of spoke about this, but I kind of want to hone in on what do you want for James Wiseman in the Pistons' future?
Honestly, if he can give us this for his career, I'm happy with it.
Yeah.
And my only takeaway out of it is when it comes to a contract extension or whatnot, we cannot give him the bag. We can't do that because he hasn't earned it. Yes, he's playing great, but I'm not trying to throw out $20 million or so to him. At least I would say a little bit higher than league minimum. At least maybe 5 mil, 7 mil, something around there. Not like something crazy, but not something too high. He's giving us the benefit of the doubt because the fact that of the matter is when you got a player who was a top 2 pick and we're sitting here and yeah, he hasn't panned out to be anything spectacular yet, but there's still a little shimmer of hope that he could be something at 22 years old. There is still that slight little bit of potential. I want him to stay, especially if he's going to play like this. But just we can't give him a massive contract if we're going to extend him in the future, because otherwise, I don't know. I wouldn't like that because if he's going to do this for his whole career and we pay him massively, then it just creates contract issues and cap space problems for our team. So to me, it's just like if he can play like this long term, keep him, but don't pay him a whole lot of money. But if he dips at any point in time with this, then it's kind of like the door's open. We're looking to trade you or we'll let you walk. But if he can stay like this or increase at any point in time for a long term, I want him to be with the Pistons.
Yeah. I think a big part of this let me get to this first. I do agree. I want him to be with the Detroit Pistons. I think that Monty Williams likes him, and I'm going to kind of prove that point with this quote right here. A big part of the process, if Wiseman stays with the Detroit Pistons, Monty Williams has to like you. Okay. And Monty Williams has this cool quote about James Wiseman 2 weeks ago. He started the quote off by saying he has been patient and that's paying off for him. His approach is tremendous, and that allows him to have these kinds of nights in their last win. Quote keeps going. If he was a guy that was emotionally unstable, it would be tougher for him to be ready for those moments because he doesn't get the consistent minutes earlier this season, but he stayed after it. He stayed with it with his work ethic and stayed working with Coach Mark Bryant. Now you're starting to see some of that hard work pay off for him. Another, to keep on the quote going by Monty Williams, takes a lot of mental toughness and fortitude to go through this, what he's been going through, not playing consistent minutes and hanging in there. He's done a really good job, and we're pleased with the production that he's putting forth on the floor. So I think that Monty Williams is pleased that James Wiseman has taken it on the chin. James Wiseman knows he was the second pick. He knows that he was about to, make millions and millions and millions of dollars if he performed, but he hasn't. And he took it on the chin and he's still grinding. And I think Monty Williams respects that. And I think that's going to be a big deal, whether he stays with the Detroit Pistons or not. If he keeps his head straight and just keeps grinding, I think that's going to be a big thing. When we were in Detroit against the two Miami Heat games, we were watching Mark Bryant pretty closely working with Jalen Duren. And I think Mark Bryant's a great coach, and he seems so engaged. And I think that's great for James Wiseman because we saw that James Wiseman struggled with that, not being engaged. But Mark Bryant is so present when he is working with his players, so motivating, just has like really good vibes. I was really impressed with Mark Bryant. How big of an impact do you think Mark Bryant's made on James Wiseman? Because you can make an argument that it's been huge, because we saw James Wiseman come in, he was struggling, and then we see firsthand Mark Bryant working with these young centers, and the vibes are high, and now some of these young centers are thriving.
Yeah, you look at just real quick, you look at Jalen Duren, Isaiah Stewart, and then James Wiseman. Their play from last year to this year, there's been a huge jump.
Oh, yeah.
Stewart, granted, it's not very substantial of a jump, but it's still significant enough to notice. And
He's
then
more consistent.
Duran's taken a larger jump. It's not as noticeable, but same thing with Stu. But then Wiseman, last year when we acquired him in those games and where he was at to where he is right now, there's a massive jump there. And his confidence is there. He's more paying better attention to his surroundings. He's just, everything has increased for him. So that's why I'm excited about this if he were to stay with us, because Mark Bryant, he's probably the unsung hero right now of the Pistons coaching staff, right? In the regards to the big man group, because when you think of the Pistons, you think of Kate Cunningham and all those guys first, and the guard heavy offense and defense that we have. But you look at the big man, all three guys have taken massive leaps from last year to this year.
Yeah. And I think it's just so cool because, you know, it was something I kind of just thought about, because I remember us kind of laughing at Mark Bryant while we were in Detroit. Like, he's just so animated and a big grizzly bear. And I just thought it was kind of cool that, like, oh, like maybe there is a correlation there that we didn't realize. Now, we're wrapping up episode number 22. By no means do we want to give you guys the impression that next year James Wiseman's an all-star. We just want to point out that he's persevering. He started the season off rough, and he's ending the season on a good note. That is a great sign that he's still grinding, even though the Pistons are having a horrible season. He's still grinding in the gym, and he's showing that when he's given minutes that he is succeeding. And we just wanted to shine some light on that this week. So make sure to comment below your thoughts on James Wiseman's play as of late, why you think he's probably succeeding other than just minutes, and what do you see happening with him in the offseason, and what role he might take on in the future. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we will see you guys in episode number 23. Peace.